I go. And when we say I go, you say I may. And what that means is a go means, hey, can I have your attention? And I may means, yes, you can. So happy that you're here on this Sunday episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, where we talk about crisis in the Congo, ongoing crisis in the Congo, never ending crisis in the Congo, and the reasons why. We thank you for joining us this weekly program by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we start, as we always do, by giving respect to the struggle of the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, whose lands that we live through today, and we wish them continued strength and growth and organization in their efforts to get their lands back, these Americas back. And we, of course, give honor and respect to our African ancestors who contributed so much. Every week we talk about different subjects. None of those topics are out of the realm of our African ancestors. Today is certainly not an exception to that. Our people have been suffering in the Congo for centuries. And this is why we must have Pan-Africanism, because it is that will end that suffering. So we're glad that you're joining us for this topic today, crisis in the Congo. And we start, as we always do, with our brief introductions. Our Ancestors' Voices, again, is a weekly program, same time, same places each week, sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we, of course, define as one unified socialist Africa. That is our objective. That is the definition of Pan-Africanism. And that's what we're fighting for. And our work to achieve this Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, a picture which is on your screen. If you're able to see it, this lays out the strategy to unite all of the revolutionary Pan-African formations on the ground throughout Africa into one worldwide fighting force for Pan-Africanism. And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu Umi, and Shakura Umi, my biological and ideological daughter. Both of us, of course, are active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started, I turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. Hoping that you all are doing your best to hang in there. We know that some folks are dealing with some really harsh conditions, and it's affecting their ability to be safe in these weather situations and whatnot, and harsh conditions in other spaces that have nothing to do with weather. So we're thinking of you. We are sending you our love. We're hoping that capitalism is continuing to crumble and not getting in the way of you achieving your best safety in all possibleness, whether that's ideologically or physically or mentally or what that may be. So thinking of you all and continuing to help raise awareness on why we need to continue to be more collective in thinking about others and not just ourselves. And so tonight is a perfect example of that, where, we're acknowledging the indigenous people. We're also acknowledging other folks who are going through some hard times right now, who may usually be able to log in right away on Sundays. And today they have different reasons why they can't join us. This is what it's all about: the camaraderie, the connectedness, the coming together, the family, the unity, the dedication to one another, the dedication to the objective that we really want to achieve: one unified socialist Africa. And what that looks like is practicing that in every aspect that we can. So, quite frankly, you might ask yourself, why do they want us to think so much about people in the Congo, Central Africa, when I'm all the way on the other side of the world in the US? That has nothing to do with me. You might be thinking that. You might be thinking that you got your own situation, you got your own set of rules, you got your own way of life here. You don't know these people. You don't know them. If they walked right past you on the street, you would have no way of knowing that these Congo people are under attack because that has nothing to do with you. Some of you have not even been to the Congo, so you might just be wondering, why are we asking you to care? Well, I think it goes back to what we've been saying since these seminars started. But I think what we've been trying to say, even with the seminars starting, is that it's always about this collective approach. It was never about just you. That's precisely the problem, is when people only think about themselves, that continues to fuel and support capitalism, because capitalism is a system where money is more important than people. And because of that, people who are in a position to make money tend to put their needs ahead of the large number of people who really need more support, even though they don't make as much money. So that means that if you are trying to fight against capitalism, then you have an overwhelming responsibility to resist as much as you can, which means you should not be supporting individualistic principles. That means you should not be supporting individualism. That's what that means. That means that you should actively work against it every single day as best that you can. You should actively work against it, just like women identifying people and male identifying people should work against patriarchy, just like differently abled people should work against ableism. People of color should work against colonialism and white supremacy. I mean, we all have to work really hard against the systems that oppress us the most. And so when we think about what it means to be individualistic, that is a terrible system of oppression, and one where you will forget very quickly how everyone else who came before you didn't really have the options of just thinking about their needs. They had no choice but to think about yours, because if they did not, you may not be here today. Because in many cases, a lot of your ancestors, the only reason that they fought off and survived is because they were trying to get to a better world for the rest of the people to come after them. If they had just given up and if they had just died, then a part of you wouldn't be here today, because that part of your ancestry DNA would no longer continue and exist. So we have to really think about everything that our ancestors went through. We have to think about how, as my dad described last weekend, you can literally feel the spirit of Africans in the you called it the room of no return. I know I'm getting it wrong. The tunnel of no return. I think you'll correct me when it gets back to you. But the space where you walk through and you either continue on the ship because you're healthy enough to be enslaved, or they kill you right there on the spot. So when my dad was speaking about that last weekend, I was really thinking about how many of our people had to make a choice of whether or not they would still try to escape because they knew that the outcome of going on the ship could not have been a good one. How many of them tried to help other people escape and maybe they still got caught as they were walking through that space of no return to get to the ship. And then I think about how many of our people jumped overboard, even with our hands shackled. We jumped overboard because we still wanted to be in control of our own fate, in terms of waiting for the ship to sail and to dock and not knowing what the outcome would be, but knowing that we had no control over it. I still remember the person in my dad's group that said, they can really feel the embodiment of what our people went through. And I just think about how much we fought to make sure that our realities were different. And so just thinking about that, just thinking about how we had to be so smart, even once we got to the plantation, where we were, sharing secrets and we used drums to communicate, thinking about how we would quilt patterns on quilts. We would sew patterns on quilts and send quilts to other parts of the plantation so folks know when the plan was to escape. How we had to be very cautious about having relationships with even the dogs on the plantation fields so that we could use them later to not be chasing us because we had found a way to appeal to their more carnivorous side by using hush puppies, for example. And so I'm just thinking about all the different survival traits, and I'm thinking about all the tactics that we had to put in play so that we could walk away from that space and be able to reproduce so that our lineage could continue years later. And literally, our great grandchildren would be sitting on a seminar having to be reminded and persuaded that they should care about their own ancestors, that they should care about their own people, that they should care about what's happening to their own continent. You should care because if you are African, then you belong to the African nation. That's why you should care. Kwame Nkrumah said it best. Any African anywhere belongs to the African nation. And so you should care because for as many years that Africa has been under attack, that is an explanation beyond measure as to why Africans are under attack. The same is true for indigenous people. The same is true for Palestinian people. This is why we say every week that you need to join an organization that's working for justice so that you can try to increase your political education and learn some tactics and some ways that you can work with those organizers that you're working with so that you all can develop some strategies to help change the conditions for all of us who are suffering. That's the objective. That's why we're okay with the fact that you may not join our organization. We just want you to join some organization that is working for justice, any organization that is working for justice, and make sure there's a political education component because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so you should care because this is impacting you. You should care because this is impacting your land. You should care because Congo people are your people and you are African. Ubuntu. I am because you are. Well, it goes both ways. You are because I am. So what's happening in the Congo is impacting Africans everywhere. And what's happening to Africans everywhere is impacting what's happening in the Congo. And so this is how we come to understand this is you have a responsibility to change the conditions and to help Africa become free. Whether you know it or not, and whether you plan to move there or not, that is your responsibility to help us achieve one unified socialist Africa. Even if you decide you don't want to organize with us, you owe Africa that much because Africa has done so much for you as an African person. And even if you were not born on African soil, you still have a responsibility to help Africa become free. Because once Africa becomes free, then you're going to be treated a lot differently. Because if the African nation is respected, then the people that descend from the nation are going to be respected. Next slide, please. So we have to understand, I tried really hard to point this out in the previous slide, but there are no loopholes. Everything is connected. Every single thing is connected. And you may not even know or believe that to be true, but trust when we say every single thing is linked up and unified within itself. So if we think about any events that have happened in the world, if we think about, excuse me, if we think about events specifically that are designed for African people since colonization took place, we can think about how enslaved Africans were taken to all parts of the world so that slavery plantations could develop within those parts of the world. And we can think about how Africa has continued to be the base of how everyone receives the resources that they're taking. You know, we always think about how all the resources that come, so the gold, the diamonds, the cobalt, the coltan, we have rubber, we have cacao, we have all of these different resources where it is just impossible for us to navigate this world without those resources because we are extremely dependent on using them. I mean, you can think about us streaming on this platform right now and using the coltan to power these devices that we have. And so this is why, you know, companies like Samsung and Apple, they understand the relevance of coltan and cobalt because that's what keeps them in business. That's what allows their cellular devices to work. And so just thinking about that, we think about how Firestone has established their rubber tree factories there. And we think about how whether you have a bicycle, whether you have a motorcycle, whether you have a vehicle, we all need tires. Now, we may find a way to use tires and build them out of another material at some point, but for the most part, rubber has been the most sustainable material that we can use for tires. And as I said, modes of transportation have become very dependent on those. So my point is, Africa is the basis for how we receive everything that the world uses. everything that the world uses, I would say at least one product comes from Africa. And you can pick any location in the world and see how it still connects back to the continent because that's the source of everything. This picture describes it very, very well. The picture describing how Africa is literally responsible for feeding the rest of the world. That is a great illustration, and it's extremely true. It is extremely true. And so when we think more about this is why we need to care about what's happening in the Congo, because what's happening to the Congolese people, if you're not in the Congo, it may not be directly impacting you, but trust me when I say there might be some policies that are still impacting you indirectly because of what's happening in the Congo. You may still be mistreated because of what's happening in the Congo. More importantly, it's impacting you because you're continuing to be ignorant. That's the biggest impact, is that you have no idea what's taking place. And if you were to do research, the sources that you're using are not credible. And so you're really not being told truthfully what's really happening. At least here with this Pan-Africanist organization, you're in a space where you have some information that you can still go back and cross-check and cross-fact if you want, fact check if you want. But at the end of the day, we are more likely to be truthful and honest with you because you and I have the same goals at the end of the day. We both want Africa to be free. And because of that, we want other people who don't have their land to be free as well. This is not a good system where all of us are suffering because we don't own our land. So we want the Palestinians to get their land back. We want indigenous people to get their land back. We want African people to get their land back, and so on and so forth, because we see the value of that. So if you were joining this seminar, then that means to some extent you understand that. You just may not be in an organization that's working for justice yet. Or maybe you are and you're still motivated to learn more because you're trying to increase your political education. But this is where it comes down to it, is that we have a responsibility to change those conditions of what's happening in the Congo. And you may be wondering, well, how does joining an organization change those conditions? Well, it starts by understanding more of what's going on. It starts by educating yourself. It starts by having a better analysis of how to tackle the problem because you have a better understanding of how the problem got started. And again, being in an organization that's working for justice is one of the better sources that you can use to really understand what's happening. If you're just receiving information from someone who's biased, like a news media outlet like CNN, for example, or Fox News, well, you have no way of knowing if it's based on truth because they lose everything if you know the truth. But if they continue to lie to you, then you're not going to be the wiser and they're going to continue to exploit the continent. So it doesn't benefit them to tell you the truth. That's why we have to go after our own resources and our own information. And we continue to say, and then I'll pass the floor back to my dad, but we continue to say that you should increase your political education when you join an organization that's working for justice. I will just say, as a final note, I'm really humbled and I'm very grateful that Kwame Nkrumah, along with many others, decided to start this organization, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, because one of the entities that they created out of the party was work study. And I'm really excited that one of the sections that we focus on in work study is dedicated to understanding what's going on in the world. It's literally called the World Geo section. And what the objective of that section is for whoever's facilitating to find an article of something that captures what's going on in a part of the world or in a specific country, or that something that's happening to numerous countries, and then they would develop discussion questions. The rest of us are supposed to read the said article before the meeting. And then we come to that meeting ready to talk about what's going on in that article. And it's really great for those of us who are mostly in the diaspora, but not being exposed to as many things that are happening around the world, which exacerbates the ignorance, right? And so just understanding more, like that's a part of political education being improved, that right there, having a World Geo section where you can intentionally find articles of things that are happening outside of the US, which decenters the US, which is great, first of all, but also it reminds you that the US is usually responsible for the downfall and the dehumanization of other countries suffering. So then we start to see again how it's all linked up, how it's all linked up. Usually you see Europe and the US in some way, shape, or form causing and connecting to other things that are happening. And so you just start to understand things a lot better, and you get more confident the more you read and the more you grow and the more you become consistent with what's happening. And so with that, I will pass it back to my dad. But just a reminder, you all, it's not too late to join an organization that's working for justice. Remember, we encouraged you to have new goals for this new season, and joining an organization that's working for justice would do more good for you than having a fitness plan or whatnot right now. Because the thing about an organization is you're going to get more out of it than you even anticipated. Shay.
Shay, thank you, Shakur. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to keep this as I get my computer to back right here and just talk about really what you raised, just taking it, contextualizing it as we talk about the Congo in Central Africa and talk about it and dig deeper into its history in order to understand what's happening there today. And as we've said many times, many times, the Congo is one of the most resource-rich regions on the entire planet. There are so many untapped resources there, even today in 2024, that represent one of two things. For us, represent vehicles to empower our people towards liberation and to make a contribution towards all suffering people on the planet Earth. For the capitalist classes, it represents potential wealth. It represents a way for them to maintain their stranglehold over the masses of people in the world by owning and controlling all of the means of production. So this is the battle. You know, I saw a video, it was a TikTok video, I believe, and this woman was on there and she was saying, she started off good. She said, you know, the struggle isn't the left versus the right as it comes to everyday people. And I thought, okay, she might say something. But then she, of course, veered off course. She said the real struggle is freedom against democracy. And I'm like, okay, you know, these people, like, this is the world we live in where people can pick up a camera and record a video and not have done 5 seconds of research to have any idea what they're talking about. But I thought what she was going to say is that the real struggle is the haves versus the have-nots. And I would have agreed with that one. You know, fundamentally, that's what it all boils down to. So this question of whether these resources are going to be used to help the masses of people on Earth, or whether they're going to be used to further enrich the elite capitalist classes on Earth. This is the fundamental question, I would argue, on the planet Earth today. And if we look at the Congo's history, we see where this struggle has played out over the last multiple centuries, right? Going back to the Berlin Conference. Of course, the problem was there before that, but specifically, the Berlin Conference came to give it an organized character. The question of colonialism, that is, gave it an organized character in terms of just, instead of a bunch of thugs and criminals running around committing crimes against humanity, what the Berlin Conference did is it said, well, let's get all of these thugs and criminals together. Britain, criminal; France, criminal; Belgium, criminal; Germany, criminal; Portugal, criminal. Let's get all of these crooks and criminals together, and let's say that we're going to sit here and negotiate how we can carve up some other people's land for our own enrichment. And that's what the Berlin Conference did in 1884 in Germany. It was a bunch of these European crooks, thugs, and criminals coming together to agree amongst themselves how they would carve up Africa. Not an African anywhere near the Berlin Conference, not an African anywhere close to making a decision about what would happen at the Berlin Conference. That's what these Europeans did at the Berlin Conference. And in terms of the Congo, it was decided at that conference in 1884 that Belgium would be awarded control of the Congo in Central Africa. Now, the Congo is almost 4 times the size of Belgium. And we already said the untapped wealth of resources made it so that Belgium had its eye solely focused on the Congo. They were already there during the Berlin Conference in 1884. And again, like I said, the conference just simply solidified their control over their region. All the Berlin Conference did is tell the other European powers the Congo belongs to Belgium. That's what it did. And that was okay with Portugal because they had Guinea-Bissau and Angola and Mozambique. It was okay with Britain because they had Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya and Azania, South Africa, Zimbabwe, etc. It was okay with France because they had Burkina Faso and Mali and Senegal and Guinea and Cameroons, etc. So this is what happened. So once Belgium got control of the Congo in an official sense, they were focused on brutally exploiting the Congo because they knew that those resources could enrich Belgium. And they did that immediately after the Berlin Conference. They institutionalized those mechanisms. And by the turn of the 19th century, Belgium was completely dependent upon the Congo to finance the development of Belgium in Europe. And so because they so depended upon Congolese wealth to do this, the Dutch knew that they had to put in place a system of control in the Congo that would ensure that at no time would there ever be any disruption of this control of Belgium of the Congo. And so they did that by inserting King Leopold, whose picture is on the bottom of the screen, around the turn of the 19th century as the undisputed decision maker about what would happen in the Congo. Now, this cracker in Belgium, he never once set foot in the Congo. He never once set foot in Africa. But every decision about what would happen in the Congo was a decision that came from his lips. And so what he wanted to do was to what I just talked about, ensure that his system was in place to ensure that the Congo was firmly in the grip of Belgium. He enacted a system of unprecedented terror against the Congolese people. And this terror consisted of the Belgium wanting to have unfettered access to all of the resources. At that time, primarily, they were interested in the ivory. They would kill the animals that had ivory, and they would take the ivory and they would ship it and they would sell it. And they made so much money doing that, that as I mentioned, that began to be a staple of the Belgium economy. And so they enacted this system of terrorism against the Congolese people, where you had to have a strict identification process even to walk down the street in the Congo. If you were in Leopoldville, which was the main city in the Congo at that time, you were in Katanga, wherever you were in Kaloli, wherever you were, you had to be able to, at a moment's notice, identify yourself to any Belgium soldier that was there, any Belgium police that was there, any Belgium cracker that was there. You had to do that. And if you did not do that to a degree that was satisfactory to them, the automatic result was one of your limbs would be amputated if you were not out and out murdered. And the purpose of this system of terror was to completely intimidate and demoralize the Congolese people. But by the time we got to around 1930, what this system had done was ended with the murder of an estimated 10 million Congolese people under King Leopold's rule in the Congo, and another 20 to 30 million people who had at least one of their limbs amputated. And this is one of the biggest tragedies in human history, you all. It's something that most people know nothing about. You know, everybody knows about the Holocaust, Nazi Germany, as they should. It was a terrible period in human history, the Holocaust in Europe, but more people were murdered in the Congo just a few short years before that, and yet virtually nobody knows anything about that. And unfortunately, this terror that happened in the Congo put in place this system of exploitation that further cemented Belgium's control over the Congo. Now, there's an old saying that repression breeds resistance, right? The more you oppress people, the more they're going to resist. And so what ended up happening is the Congolese people were not demoralized by this brutal oppression from Belgium. Instead, the Congolese people, as African people have done historically, as all oppressed people have done historically, continue to resist this oppression. And this was manifested in the 1950s through the development of the National Congolese Movement, or as they call it, National Mouvement, however you say that in Portuguese, or I'm sorry, in Dutch, Congolese. That's what they call it, the National Congolese Movement. And Patrice Lumumba was a young man in his 30s who rose to the leadership of the National Congolese Movement, or the MNC, as they were called. And they pushed for independence. Now, Patrice Lumumba was highly motivated after he attended the All African People's Conference in Ghana in 1958. And it was in that at that conference where Lumumba was heavily influenced by people like Frantz Fanon, who gave an outstanding speech at the All African People's Conference, and most notably by Kwame Nkrumah, who was the convener of the All African People's Conference in Ghana in 1958. And it was there that Lumumba became, they developed a relationship with people like Fanon and Nkrumah and became mentored by Kwame Nkrumah. And it was there that Lumumba left and accelerated the efforts of the National Congolese Movement to gain independence in the Congo. So in July of 1960, the Congo became independent. And because of the constant sabotage by Belgium, by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America, all of these entities, by Britain and their M15, which is their equivalent of the CIA, all of these countries understood that they had to ensure that Congolese resources were in the firm control of the capitalist classes of the world. At this time in 1960, we were at the height of what they called the Cold War, the war of the United States of America and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, right, against the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, right? And the proliferation of nuclear weapons was the primary activity going on in the world during that time, 1960. And nuclear weapons are built from atomic power. Atomic power comes from uranium. And at that time, the Congo had the world's largest unfettered supply of uranium. So these imperialist powers, the US, Britain, France, Belgium, etc., there was no way in hell they were going to see the National Congolese Movement rise up talking about, we're going to take control of all the Congolese resources to free the Congolese people from all these decades of terrorism that have been enacted against them by Belgium and all of the imperialist powers. That's important that everybody understands that, because that was at the time when these crooks, thugs, and criminal nations said, we cannot allow these people to have their independence. Now, they didn't want to just say it like that. So instead, they had to play into the Cold War rhetoric. And they had to say, well, Lumumba's a communist. And so that's our justification for wiping him out, is that he's a communist and he's going to go on the side of the Soviet Union, and communism is bad for the planet Earth. That was their rhetoric. It's still their rhetoric to this day. And so what happened is that although the independence happened in just July of 1960, by the fall, they were already plotting to assassinate Lumumba just a couple of months after he was elected prime minister. Now, Lumumba was elected by the Congolese people. a coalition of different ethnic groups, primarily the Baluba people, who were located in the Katanga region, which is central in the Congo and is where most of the resources in the Congo can be located. But there were other ethnic groups. There are many ethnic groups in the Congo. There are many others, excuse me, who also supported the national Congolese movement. And Lumumba, being mentored by Kwame Nkrumah, understood that in order for his government to have the best possibility to survive, they had to ensure that they had a strong coalition among ethnic groups, among political formations. So Lumumba appointed Joseph Kasavubu as president of the Congo. Lumumba was prime minister. Kasavubu was president. This was a political maneuver on the part of Patrice Lumumba. Now, not long after Lumumba did this, Kasavubu, firmly in the control of imperialism, was persuaded by Larry Devlin, the CIA man assigned to the Congo, and a woman named Clark, who was the M15, I told you, the intelligence equivalent for Britain in the Congo, to have Kasavubu dismiss Lumumba from his position as prime minister. And Kasavubu did this. And they also encouraged Mosh Tshombe to say, well, you're the president of the Katanga region. I just said was the most resource-rich area in the Congo. And so they encouraged Tshombe to say, well, we're going to secede. We're no longer going to be a part of the Congo. We're going to be our own separate nation, thus taking the resource-rich part of the Congo outside of the Congo in an effort to undermine the national Congolese movement and Patrice Lumumba. We're sure you know the history. We did an entire workshop on it just a couple of weeks ago. So if you don't know it, you can go back and watch it. But of course, eventually Patrice Lumumba was assassinated. That was the plan, was to get him out of the way. And the plan was the CIA had groomed this man, Joseph Mobutu, a military man, to take control of the country. And the reason why this history is so important to understand is because it was Kasavubu dismissing Lumumba, which he had no constitutional right to do under Congolese law. But the fact that he did that opened the way for Mobutu to say, well, we have to have a military coup d'etat to bring order here. Of course, that was not the objective. The objective was, of course, not to bring order, but that was used as an excuse for Mobutu to take power in the Congo, which he did in 1960 and which he held until 1997. All during those years in which the Congo, its history of brutal control and intimidation of the Congolese people continued for the entire 37-year period until Mobutu was finally run out of the Congo. Now, there's a couple of things here that are worth mentioning, that efforts were made to address this. After Lumumba's assassination, of course, Cuba, socialist Cuba, as they always have done, came to the aid of the Congolese people and the national Congolese movement. Ernesto Che Guevara, as you see in the picture in the middle, that's a picture taken in the rural area of the Congo, went there with 100 African Cubans to help the national Congolese movement engage in an attempt to win back power in the Congo. And they engaged in that effort for a couple of years. They, of course, were not successful, but it's important to mention this because there's this continued effort to try to discredit Che Guevara. And I had some cracker the other day say, well, Che Guevara shot my father in the face in Cuba. You don't know anything about that. And I said, no, I don't know anything about that. But I'm pretty sure if Che Guevara shot your goddamn father in the face, your damn father deserved to be shot in the goddamn face. Because I know this man went to Africa and put his life on the line for us So I don't give a damn about you or your goddamn father. We are saying this man was a revolutionary dedicated to the masses of people on the planet Earth. And I know a lot of you, that's way too much. You're like, oh my God, you know, for you, that's your damn problem. Wake up and understand the real world that we live in today. Okay, we are going to pick our own heroes and heroines and those people who represent us. And these are folks who came to our aid in Africa when we needed it. You weren't there. You didn't do it. So this is why we love Che Guevara. But the Congo situation, as I mentioned, has continued. So now we come to present day, 2024. If you look at the Congo today, it still has so many rich, largely untapped supplies of natural resources, of coltan, as Shakur mentioned, which is used to facilitate digital technology and the internet. Cobalt, which is used to produce the power, the batteries in electric cars. And obviously everybody knows electric cars are the rage now. And most of what you need to make those batteries, you can get only in a few places, and the Congo is one of them. The Congo has one of the world's highest levels of hydroelectric power potential, which is how you create electricity. And then there are also 80 million hectares of arable land in the Congo. Now, what you have to realize about that is 1 hectare of land, because here in the United States, people don't say hectare, you know, we say acres, right? So if you compare a hectare to an acre, you have to have like almost 2.5 acres to make a hectare. And the reason why that's important, you all, is when we say there are 80 million hectares of arable land in the Congo, there are 600 million hectares of arable land all throughout Africa. This is land that is available and capable of growing food. All right. Now, comparably, where I live here in California, you have the San Joaquin Valley. The San Joaquin Valley here in California has 50,000 acres of arable land. And again, in order to compare an acre to a hectare, you have to double and a half the acre to get to 1 hectare. So that tells you how much more land you're talking about when you say 80 million hectares of arable land in the Congo compared to only 50,000 acres of arable land here in California in the United States of America. But this 50,000 acres of arable land here in California is a top 5 food producing region on the planet Earth. If I don't care where the hell you are, if you've drank wine ever in your life, if you've eaten cashews, you've eaten nuts of any kind, you've eaten any type of fruit or vegetable whatsoever, I can guarantee you with my life, you have eaten food grown in the San Joaquin Valley, right here where I live, in Northern California. And yet, that's only a fraction of the arable land compared to what exists in the Congo, you all, where no food is currently being grown on the 80 million hectares of arable land in the Congo. So the point I'm making, the reason why I'm spending as much time to lay this out, is that the Congo in 2024 is a hotbed of resource availability compared to anywhere else on the planet Earth. And these people, again, the question is are these resources going to be produced to serve the interests of the masses of humanity? Or are they going to be produced to serve the enrichment of the capitalist classes? That is the question. And because of this question, currently there are 120 estimated active militias operational in the Congo today, engaged in fighting over control of land to control these resources I'm talking to you about. And as a result of that, since 1998, this has resulted in almost 5.5 million deaths in the Congo. Now, this is not the result of, well, those African people just can't get along. This is active sabotage on behalf of imperialism, the same as they did in 1960, fighting viciously to ensure that they can stay in a position to control these resources. The car companies have to have this to produce their products. The internet companies, the cell phone companies, the television companies have to have this to control the production of their products. The food producers have to have this to control the production of their products. The producers of electricity have to have this to control the production of their product. So that's why these militias are running amok. There's a woman raped in the Congo every 48 seconds. The conditions for the people there are completely chaotic. And you're as likely to experience death in the Congo as you are to enjoy a decent meal. And this is the situation that we are dedicated to see end so that our people can be taken care of and respected as valuable human beings on the planet Earth. And these resources can be used for what they should be used for, to advance Africa, and for Africa to use those resources to contribute to humanity. That's what we want to see do, because we know that these militias there, like a lot of these militias, are staging and operational out of neighboring Rwanda, which is a border country. And this is very important because a lot of Africans, like, there's been a ton of development in Rwanda. Like, one of the most modern cities in Africa, all of a sudden, is Kigali, which is the capital city in Rwanda. People go all over the world to vacation in Kigali, Rwanda now. And because of this, Paul Kagame, who's the president of Rwanda, is receiving praise in the world because of this development in Rwanda. But this man was trained by the Hoover Institute. He's a CIA man. You know, Kwame Ture used to say all the time, don't confuse form over essence. Don't get confused because something looks good and you don't know what makes it up. We got to understand essence. Kigali looks great. Kagame sounds great, but this is a CIA man. And I didn't fall in with the rain yesterday. There is no way in hell I'm going to ever trust a CIA man. And I know that one of the difficulties that the Congo faces is all of these militia groups who are coming into the Congo to wreak havoc out of Rwanda. That's a clear fact that's been verified by anybody that's paid enough attention to see what's going on, whether it's the African Union, the United Nations, your mama, whoever spent any time figuring this thing out knows that this is what's happening in the Congo and in Central Africa. So we don't want to hear anything about Paul Kagame. We're talking about the need for African people on the ground to come together, unify, organize, and drive all of these criminal capitalist supported elements out of the Congo and out of every element of Africa. So that's why we say, without question, that, as always, Africa will lead the way. You know, the Congo today, with virtually nothing in place, nothing developed, right, still has a 55 billion gross domestic product just because of those resources in 2023. And that's comparable to Nigeria is Africa's largest country, right, in terms of population, 211 million people, right? Comparable, the United States of America, which is the third largest country in the world after China and India, right, has 330 million people. So Nigeria is a large country. And because of its oil wealth, primarily, that's, you know, still stolen by these multinational crooks and thugs, like Shell Oil, for example, but they have a gross domestic product in Nigeria of 477 billion. So the point of this comparison, you all, is that with just a little development in the Congo could become one of the largest producing countries in all of Africa. And of course, Africa can become the largest producing area on the entire planet. We recognize this as Pan-Africanists. This is our work, is to see this. See, because what we want, the work that we do is to help our people understand what I just got through talking about. We should not be sitting here begging these crackers for a job at a car dealership when we should be controlling the production of the damn cars. All the resources to produce the cars won't work without African resources, without African zinc, without African steel, without African oil, without African rubber, without African cobalt. The car is not going to work. So the most plentiful supplies for all of those things are at home in Africa. So we got to develop our people's thinking so that we're not just happy to say, oh, I got a Tesla. I don't know how I'm going to afford the payment for it, but I got a Tesla. To expand that low-level peanut brain thinking to one of saying that African people should be producing cars to benefit all of Africa through socialist production of cars that can benefit everybody in Africa, and we can make our rightful contribution to the worldwide socialist and later communist movement. That's how we want to grow our people's consciousness. I know that's a lot in 2024. I know people are like, oh my God, that's never going to happen. There's no way you're ever going to do that. You just keep thinking that. In fact, I'm not even going to argue with people like you. You just keep doing, just think whatever the hell you want to think that helps you sleep at night. While you're thinking whatever you want to think about what we're not going to do, we're going to continue organizing and we're going to do it. I went to dinner Thursday night with one of our new recruits here. And he asked me, how have you been able to continue this work as long as you did? And I told him, man, I'm on a mission. You know, my job is to do everything I can to develop people like yourself so that you can be a stronger warrior than I am. And I'm going to do everything I can. There's nothing on earth short of death that's going to stop me from doing that. And as long as I know that, I can sleep well at night. I'm going to do everything I can to raise hell for my enemies. That's my role in life, and I get nothing but joy and glee from being able to do it. So this is our work, is to create revolution, which will produce a free, united, and socialist Africa to unleash the potential of all this wealth for the benefit of Africa, Africans, and the world. That's what we're trying to do. Because we know that when we can make this happen, all this nonsense that we're listening to today will be gone overnight. All of these Negroes out here talking about, well, I'm Native American. I ain't African. I'm Native American. Soon as we control the wealth of Africa, now all these people, overnight, now they're going to be Africans all of a sudden. When we control the production of the cars, when we control the oil production, when we control the cobalt, as we will, all these people are going to be Africans, or all these people, they're Israelites, they're native to the Americas, they're everything except what they really are, Africans. All those people are going to be African overnight. You mark my words on that. And we won't hold a grudge against them. They're Africans. We'll accept them. It's not a problem. We understand the confusion. We know why they are the way they are right now, because for two reasons. One, we don't study anything. We want the easy way out. You know, we don't want to work hard and study and understand this history. We want to just take the easy way out. That's the first problem. The second problem is that because of the first problem, we don't know our history. So everybody wants to be identified with what they perceive to be a winner. And right now, that's not Africa. So people don't want to identify with that. They want to identify with what they think is the winner. Zionist Israel. So I'm an Israelite because Zionist Israel's in power. So I want to relate to that. I want to say that's mine. It's not the Palestinians, it's mine. You know, I want to be in the Americas because I want to have America on my name because America is the strongest country on the planet Earth. So I want to identify with that. That's cool. No hard feelings. We know the confusion. We have nothing but love and nurturing for our people. We're trying to get free because we know that when Africa is free, all these people will be lining up to be Africans. There isn't the slightest doubt on the planet Earth about that. And we will welcome them because our objective is not to be right, but to be free. And we know that this work to bring about a free, united, and socialist Africa is critical. So what we want to ask you to do, as Shakura said, of course, join an organization, of course, do that. But also, if you're in an organization, make sure your organization is talking about what's happening in the Congo and what's happening in the Sahel region in Africa, all over Africa, what's happening in the Horn, what's happening in Southern Africa, what's happening in Northern Africa, all over Africa. Because as Africa goes, we go. No question about that. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going with America. I don't give a damn what happens in America. I'm just here. The only reason why I'm still here is because we're trying to take back the resources they've been stealing from us for over 500 years. I have no allegiance to Africa. Or I'm sorry, no allegiance to America. None whatsoever. Zero allegiance to Africa. You give me one of your flags, I'm going to burn it. You tell me to sing your song, I'm going to tell you to go straight to hell. We have no allegiance to your country, and we don't need to have any allegiance to it. We don't give a damn if that makes you mad. There's nothing you can do about it. We will have one unified socialist Africa. We owe you nothing but to walk right over your chest. So we thank you for joining us today, as always, and we invite you back next week, January 21st, same time, same place, same everything. We have a program where we're going to talk about the martyrs for January. We talked about Patrice Lumumba as one of them. Obviously, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has a born day this month. And John Huggins and Apprentice Bunchy Carter from the Black Panther Party were assassinated on January 17th, 1969, as Patrice Lumumba was assassinated on January 17th, 1961. So we will talk about our martyrs next Sunday. So join us for that. The QR code in the upper left-hand corner, we have all of our AAPRP programs. We invite you to check those out. Forward Ever Shop, so you can buy clothing that is talking about the freedom and liberation of the African masses. Hoodcommunist.org is a revolutionary blog of African voices, so support that. Go to betterworld.me. All of these videos are there, including this one, at least another 30 minutes or so after the broadcast. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Go to AAPRP-intl.org. Watch the orientation video. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And if you don't want to do that, join some organization working for African people, the Black Alliance for Peace, or any of the other ones. And if you don't want to join any of that, join. I'm glad it's the top of the hour, so he can shut up organization. But you got to join some organization working for our people. And then the bottom right, support the Burkina Books Project in Burkina Faso. Click on the QR code and become a sponsor. You can sponsor as much as $5 a month. You got $5. If you in this capitalist backwards cesspool empire, you got $5. And if you don't got it, you can get it from somebody. Those of you that are committing crimes, commit a crime for the African Revolution. Get $5 a month to support Burkina Books. And support my book. Get my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. If you got it, get more of them. We're trying to do all of this anti-fascist work. This is how we fund that work, is through the sale of my book. So please help us in doing that. Give a thought for our family members in the Congo. Give a thought in solidarity for the people in Gaza. Give a thought for all the houseless people who are scattered and suffering through abysmal weather conditions in the United Snakes of America. Give a thought for all the suffering people in Brazil and in Central and South America and Asia. Give a thought for all the people who are standing up to fight for justice. Get yourself in an organization. Don't listen to what these people are telling you. We are winning this fight. That's why they're working so hard to sabotage the fight. But they are not going to win. Like I told you, I told the young man the other day, we are on a mission. The problem we have is it's just not enough of us. So we are happy to have you join us in this fight. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening.